In a quiet little village, nestled between hills and golden fields, lived a humble farmer. He wasn't rich nor powerful, but he had something many people long for: peace in his heart and pride in his work. Every morning, he woke up while the sky was still covered in mist. His rough hands touched each young rice plant as if they were his own children, raised with sweat and hope. To him, planting seeds in the soil wasn't just a livelihood. It was a belief that effort would blossom and bear fruit. But then, that summer came earlier than usual. The rains didn't come. The sky stayed silent, and his once lush fields began to wither, day by day, under the scorching sun. The green shoots turned grayish-brown. The soil cracked open. The family well dried up. No matter how hard he worked, he couldn't defeat nature. And for the first time in many years, he felt powerless. Sometimes life tests even the most honest souls. And in this story, the test comes not from the soil, but from a man who smiled with a lie behind his lips. But before we meet the man behind the lie, let's walk beside the farmer, just for a moment longer, to see how desperation led him to knock on a neighbor's door. There once lived a humble farmer in a small village, tucked between gentle hills and endless skies. He didn't own much. No grand house. No overflowing granary. But what he did have was a field he loved, hands that worked hard, and a heart that believed in the goodness of life. He wasn't chasing riches, just enough to feed his family, to put warm food on the table, and to sleep each night knowing he had done his best. Each morning, before the sun rose, he walked barefoot on the cool soil, whispering prayers to his crops. The earth responded with silent gratitude, sprouting green shoots that reached for the sky. But then the rains didn't come. The skies that once poured life now withheld their blessings. The wind was dry. The ground cracked. His plants curled up like frightened children. His small well barely gave a trickle. And the village streams? Already long gone. At first, he tried to smile through it. Tough seasons come, he told himself. They always pass. But this time felt different. Day by day, the weight grew heavier. Not just on his shoulders, but on his spirit. For the first time in his life, hard work wasn't enough. And when a man gives everything he has, and still watches his land turn to dust, he begins to ask questions no one wants to ask. What if I fail them? What if I can't provide? It was in that silence, between hope and helplessness, that he looked toward his neighbor's land, where a deep, clean well stood, untouched, full. And so, with worn sandals and a hesitant heart, he made a decision that would change everything. He walked across the field, not to ask for charity, but to buy a chance to save what he had worked for his whole life. But what he didn't know was that the well he wished to buy came with a price far greater than gold. And the man who owned it wore kindness like a mask, hiding something much colder beneath. The neighbor lived just across the dusty path. His house was bigger, his fields greener, and his well deep and full of life. Unlike the farmer, he had wealth, and he knew it. When the farmer knocked gently on his door, the neighbor welcomed him with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Ah, friend, come in, come in. What brings you here on such a hot day?" The farmer, with his straw hat clutched in both hands, explained his troubles, how the land was dry, the well had run empty, and how he hoped to purchase the neighbor's well to save his crops. For a moment, there was silence. Then the neighbor nodded, slowly, thoughtfully. "Of course," he said. "If it's to help your family, let's make a deal." The farmer's eyes lit up. He offered everything he had, savings from years of work, and they shook hands. That evening, the farmer sat by the edge of the well, hopeful for the first time in weeks. He didn't know it yet, but that smile he received earlier wasn't kindness. It was calculation. Greed doesn't always wear a scowl. Sometimes it wears a smile, a handshake, even a kind word. And that's what makes it so dangerous. The next morning, with the sun barely up, the farmer brought his buckets and ropes, ready to begin. But just as he lowered his rope into the well, a voice barked from behind. "Stop! You can't take the water." It was the neighbor, no longer smiling. "You bought the well, not the water inside it. That's still mine." The farmer froze. "What? You heard me," the man said, folding his arms. "You own the walls, the bricks, the hole, but not the water." There was no agreement about that. It was as if the earth beneath him had cracked again. He had spent everything for nothing. No crops, no water, no way forward. And as the neighbor turned and walked away, the farmer stood still, watching the well that was his, but held nothing he could touch. In life, there are people who will sell you the dream, but keep the power. They'll give you the stage, but cut off your mic. That's the trick of false deals. They leave you holding the shell while they guard the substance. But injustice doesn't always go unanswered. And sometimes, truth finds its voice in unexpected places, like a quiet courtroom, or the wisdom of an old man who's seen too many masks before. The sun rose higher, but the farmer's heart sank deeper. He sat beside the well that was now his by paper, by promise, by every coin he had. But the water was no longer his to touch. A well without water is like a promise without truth, beautiful on the outside, empty within. He tried to reason. He pleaded, "Surely this isn't fair. You sold me the well because I needed the water." But the neighbor stood firm, arms crossed, lips pressed, enjoying the spectacle of control. "You should have read the fine print," he said coldly. Water was never part of the deal. The farmer had nothing left, not even words. That evening he returned home, empty buckets in hand, and silence in his heart. Sometimes in life, we do everything right. We trust. We pay. We believe. But still, we end up on the wrong side of someone else's game. This isn't just about a well. It's about all the moments we've been misled by people who bend rules to fit their desires. Bosses who promise growth but give no opportunity. Partners who speak love but act with control. Deals that sound good, until you read between the lines. There's a special kind of pain that comes not from losing, but from being played. The farmer could have given up. Could have curled into that feeling of being small, powerless, betrayed. But instead he stood up, not with fists, but with faith. If the words between men can be twisted, he thought, then let me bring this to someone whose words carry weight. And so, with hope flickering in his chest like a single lantern in the dark, the farmer made his way to the king's court, seeking not revenge, but justice. The journey to the king's court was not a long one, but for the farmer, each step felt like a question. Will they believe me? Will the truth matter? Or will power win again? When he arrived, the hall was quiet. Guards stood like statues. And in the center, beneath a high golden canopy, sat the king, wise, fair, and known for listening more than he spoke. The neighbor had already arrived, dressed in fine robes, confidence etched on his face. He greeted the court with charm, masking his trickery and eloquence. The farmer, on the other hand, had no clever words, just truth. He explained what had happened, how he had bought the well, how he had been denied its water. The neighbor interrupted. "Your Majesty, I sold him the stone and the space, but never the water. That was never mentioned in the agreement." The court murmured. Some nodded. Technically, the neighbor wasn't wrong. Sometimes, the king said softly, justice and law don't always speak the same language. Unsure of how to rule, the king turned to his most trusted advisor, an old minister known for wisdom that cut through noise like a blade through silk. The minister listened to both sides again, then looked at the neighbor and said, "You sold the well, but kept the water?" "Yes," the neighbor replied. "That was not part of the deal." The minister paused, then smiled, not with joy but with clarity. "Very well," he said. "Then if the water belongs to you, but the well belongs to the farmer, you must remove your water immediately. Or else pay rent daily for storing it on his land." The court fell silent. The neighbor's smile cracked. He stuttered. He protested. But there was no way out. He couldn't remove the water, and he certainly wouldn't pay rent forever. Defeated, he bowed his head. Let the farmer use the well. Sometimes, the law may be twisted by clever words, but wisdom always sees the truth behind the trick. And in life, we all meet people who play with rules, turning details into weapons. But in the end, it's not who speaks louder that wins. It's who speaks with integrity. The well was his again. But more than water, the farmer had gained something far greater. A quiet reminder that truth, though sometimes slow, never fails to rise. From that day on, the people in the village no longer looked at the wealthy neighbor the same way. Before, he was respected for his wealth, for his full granaries, his cool well, and his words that always seemed reasonable. But now, only silence remained, and eyes filled with doubt. No one trusted him anymore. He lost more than a well. He lost something no amount of gold could buy back, his name. That's the thing about clever lies. They work for a while. You might win the argument. You might get what you want. You might even convince others that you're right. But when the truth finally comes out, it doesn't just expose the lie. It exposes the liar. In our world, we've all seen it. A business deal where someone hides details in the fine print. A student who cheats and scores high once. A friend who twists the truth for their benefit. And yes, they might get ahead for a moment. But cleverness without conscience always collapses. Just like a house built on sand, it stands tall until the first wave of truth washes in. Your reputation is like a shadow. It follows you everywhere. But the moment you step into dishonesty, it stops walking with you. And no matter how successful someone seems, if people can't trust your words, they won't trust your worth. As for the farmer, he never raised his voice, never sought revenge. He just stood by what was right. And in the end, it wasn't just water he gained. It was the quiet respect of an entire village. Because in this world full of shortcuts, manipulation, and noise, sometimes the most powerful thing you can be is honest. As time passed, the farmer's crops came back to life. The green rows of rice began to stretch upward beneath the sunlight. Children's laughter echoed across the fields, and inside the small house, though the meals were simple, they were rich in happiness. What the farmer received wasn't just water. It was trust. It was respect. It was peace in his sleep and pride when looking in the mirror each morning. He had planted honesty and reaped honor. We often think of treasure as gold, fame, or power. But in real life, true treasure is the heart of people. It's being trusted when someone has no reason to doubt you. It's doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. Integrity is the treasure that doesn't shine, but it stays. It doesn't bring applause, but it brings peace. You don't need to be a hero or the wealthiest person. You just need to be true to yourself, deceive no one, not even your own conscience. There are small shopkeepers who don't advertise, don't use tricks. Yet customers keep coming back year after year because they know. Here, people keep their word. Just like that farmer. He wasn't smarter than anyone else. He just refused to trade what's right for a dishonest victory. And if there's one thing worth holding onto for life, it's not the money in your pocket or the size of your house. It's your honor, something that can't be bought or sold, but will stay with you until the very end. The story of the farmer and the well might just be a small tale in the world of folklore. But if you listen closely, you'll realize it's your story too. In a world where smooth words often earn more praise than truth, where shortcuts seem faster than the honest path, will you choose what's easy or what's right? You may not be the richest or the most clever, but if you hold on to honesty, you will never be a loser. The farmer's victory wasn't the well. It was growth. It was honor. It was the lesson the whole village, and all of us, will remember. Truth may arrive slowly, but it always comes in time when you choose to walk with it. If this story made you reflect, share it with someone who might need a gentle reminder about the power of honesty. And don't forget to leave a comment. What is your true treasure in life? We'd love to hear your story. Thank you for taking the time to listen. May you always have the strength to choose what's right, even when it's not easy. And on that journey, believe this, you are already a treasure.